Another week, man, another week. Whoops, my goodness, another week. Oh my gosh, so many things I got to sort through.
You act like you old or something. I mean,
No,
making all that
never,
noise just to
never
move.
that. If you
Okay,
saw the stuff that I had to do
I'm
behind the
moving around
scenes,
just fine.
if
Yeah,
you saw the
okay.
stuff I had to do behind the scenes, it would blow your mind. You'd be like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know how to do this. Let me call somebody to come and help me.
No, no, I know how to do all this stuff.
Right,
Uh,
right. Right.
I,
I'm sure you do. I'm
it's
sure.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. You know how to do
no,
that back in the old school. That's how you did it. That's how you did everything. You did a little
everything good as
quartet with
that.
the snaps, running, walking down the street and everything. That's what you did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just
So
trying to say you made a lot of noise just moving around. I'm like, man, you're young, supposed to be a young man. You
no,
sound
I'm.
like an
It's
old
not.
man.
It's not noises from
I
being
heard
hurt
some
or
bones
anything.
cracking and all.
It's not even noises from being hurt. It's just from me trying to figure out where I had everything situated on my other screen so I can do the recording for our podcast. So
Okay.
anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted,
I'm just checking on you, make sure you're all right over there.
uh-huh. Well, I should be checking on you. You the one out there, you gotta get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. Anyway, I gotta ask you something. So,
Okay.
back in your era, when it was
Right.
tumbleweeds and you walking 14 miles both ways or whatever y'all like to say
That's
to make
right. Uphill and
beat
downhill.
beat your chest and everything like that. How were how were the kids that liked well, that weren't like I guess the athletes or anything like that. I guess the nerds. How were they during your era? What did they do?
Well, they kind of kept to themselves. Usually part of clubs and things like that, and you know things things like that. But it wasn't that bullying. You know how you
Mm,
see on TV a lot of times or hear about in
mm,
other cultures. It wasn't like that in our school. It's kind of just everybody had their own little circle, and it pretty much went that way. They had cards card collections, comics, um, and didn't even know it at that time. But Dragon Ball, that I think that was out during that time, just the beginning stages of it,
mm,
and you had people that talked about that, but we didn't even know it was anime
mm.
at the time. But now realize it was anime,
Right,
the beginnings of anime. So
right.
so
Would you
that
say
they're more focused on those type things.
would you say it was more like the group that nobody would interact with? Like they thought it was like, oh, those kids are like they're standoffish or whatever, and there's no interest redeeming qualities about that group per se.
Well, I think they were more standoffish as well because they were comfortable
Mm,
in that arena in a sense. Why put myself out there unnecessarily to be ridiculed, laughed at, and things like that? And especially, color plays a factor too. When you know, a typical black man can't just walk up to, a guy back in the day and say, "Oh, let's talk about some comics."
mm.
It's not, it wasn't, embraced like that. You either did it in the privacy of your own home, didn't let anybody know,
Mm.
or you just, you know, find like-minded people to
I
do.
got you. Well, the only reason I bring it up is because I see a lot of it becoming more mainstream. It wasn't more like it seemed like when I was growing up, it was more like a little club, like a little club of people that we had some similar values and things like that you could talk about from time to time. Now it's more accepted amongst the masses due to there being a lot of money in that market, and that's the main thing that I find kind of interesting is how the dynamic changed like back in your day and when I was growing up coming through high school it wasn't really anything. It was like, oh, nerds, whatever. You really didn't have any interest in a lot of stuff that
So you
they
just ask about schoolwork, things,
they
problems, and
exact
things like
exactly.
that.
exactly. But now with the movies coming out and
Mhm.
like you were saying, anime is definitely more popular amongst a
Absolutely.
mass majority of
I
individuals.
still watch animated news stuff too.
Mm,
So and it's good. I mean, and the thing about it, in Western culture, our type movies and type cartoon, the good and bad, they both in anime, they both have ideals. They both think they're right,
mm,
but you just see how they clash and who wins and who comes out. But it's but it's an ideology there, not just right or wrong.
mm,
That's not good or bad. It's two different how people look at things. And it's interesting. You could attach to one end, and you could attach to the villain,
mm.
supposedly the villain. You could have, so I think that's a good spin, which anime gives to its viewers and supporters.
Right. And I think the main thing that associates a lot of people with that is video games. I think that's the underlying that you would never know a lot of people what they do as far as like watching the shows or anything like that. But if you talk about a video game, you're just automatically flagged. And I find it interesting due to
Mm-hmm.
the fact that now you can actually make a decent amount of money, playing those things that you couldn't do that before, like back in the day or whatever. And now it's more accepted amongst, I guess, society because back then you were like, if you were like, oh, I play video games, you get looked at a certain kind of way by by a lot of people. It's true. You can sit there and
Right,
see
right,
that
right, right.
it's that.
I can understand it. I can understand why somebody will be compelled to play a video game
Mm,
and use that be- because the floor is low. It's a low floor. Anybody can decide to play it.
mm,
Cost is not high. But if you do well at it and you're good, you got a high ceiling.
right.
You see what I'm saying?
No, I understand.
And it's interactive where like certain games, you play a certain role. So when you're there, you play a part
Mm,
in the world. It's not necessarily, I mean, just like in sports, you got a star and then you got the rest of the team.
right.
And the team is forgotten, the star is remembered. You
Right.
know, so with video games, you have a positive interaction. You play a part. You are a part of the game. It's active.
Right.
It's not passive like just watching TV all day. It's an
Right.
active type.
I mean, I just find it more so fascinating that a lot of the companies that you would think wouldn't be associated with that, like especially growing up, now all of a sudden want to put their hand in the pot because they see exactly that, and that's what I'm getting at. It's like a lot of these companies had nothing to do with it. They wanted nothing to do with any of that stuff because it was seen some kind of way amongst their peers or whatever the case may be. But now that there's that huge financial backing because we're talking about billions of dollars. It's a $1 billion industry. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got to be in the in crowd and show us. So that was part of the reason why I brought that topic up today because I thought it was kind of funny how the tables have turned and now that culture that was more so in itself like by itself amongst us not even really I mean it was a decent sized group but it wasn't like
This
mainstream.
size group, but it wasn't like
It's not,
mainstream
yeah,
in
it's
your
not
face.
mainstream like it is now, and I just think it's funny that all of a sudden now it's like what would appear for a lot of people as uncool is now the cool thing.
No,
So
yeah, I mean, you think about it, the guys who used to be in the comics.
right.
You think about it now with Marvel and all the heroes and things that are coming out on mainstream. These people are the go-to people. These are people who people look at and say, "Hey, is that character supposed to do this? Is this supposed to happen?" And now, like you said, they're being embraced, not
Right.
ostracized because they read comics, old comics, even back in the day when it first started. You know, those things play a major role into to people understanding what the current movies and new movies. Is he supposed to have these powers, or his powers get stronger? You
Mhm.
know, in episodes. So it's different things like that that has brought the. I'm not going to say that, but nerds in the forefront.
Right. I mean, it is what it is. You call it
Yeah,
what it is. You're not gonna fit anybody. People are like, yeah, I'm a
right,
nerd,
right.
whatever. Um, I just find it really interesting that over the years, especially, well, more so my generation is where it's
Right.
become a lot more popular to embrace that stuff. Yes, you'll have your one-off people that are like, oh, you watch, but there's a lot of underlying layers that are developed in those shows, and if people sat down and watched it, they more than likely would be hooked on what they're watching if they have somebody to watch it with or explain it to them instead of just automatically going on off the assumption that, oh, it's just a cartoon, or whatever the argument is that people make for that. um,
You talk about anime or
yeah,
any?
yeah.
Okay. Yes,
N- Not
absolutely,
not
absolutely.
more not the cartoons are just, there's a lot of cartoons that do have a lot of character building and
Uh,
things like that. More
right,
so I don't know about your generation, but my generation had a lot of like the original, like Batman.
right,
Like
right.
Batman with where he was standing on a little tower and you hit the lightning flash or whatever, that one. Like the
Mm.
old school DC shows that came out, and then you had and I guess my generation grew up on a lot of stuff. We had like the Power
Oh yeah,
Rangers,
yeah,
the
yeah.
Transformers was kind
Transformers.
of like, yeah, it was kind of that era too. Transformers, and that's still a major movie maker,
Yeah.
especially with that coming out.
Transformers.
Oh, I'm going to see
Yeah.
that. I'm going to
You
see it
want
next
to see
week.
that?
So I
Okay.
mean, there's no question. Like that was probably one of my favorite shows of all time. But it's just I don't know. It's just interesting, like seeing it through my eyes, because like I hung around with a lot of different people in high school. Like I knew
Mhm.
people from every type of group, but more so the unpopular kids were more so like the nerdy kids and the kids that were more standoffish and played video games and stuff like that. But now there's things in there that can make you money and make you, I guess, popular, or however you want to phrase it, amongst the masses, because you're really good at the video game, and now you have notoriety for things that you might not have had back in high school, or things you may be made fun of back in high school. So it's just interesting how the dynamics change, because that was more so like uh an athlete. If you were an athlete, that's the path you were looking down. You weren't looking down that path as somebody that was, playing a card game or a video game, or,
That's right.
into drawing and animation and stuff like that. So I just find it, excuse me, I find it really fascinating. And I know you probably, because it was probably more empty, I guess, when you were coming up compared to what it is now, and all the stuff that you've seen,
You mean empty as in what?
like what was out there as far as
But,
like,
oh yeah, we didn't have all the stuff. I mean, you see how technology has changed
right,
and all that. So, and you got communities now. Um back then there was no internet.
right,
y- to connect everybody. It was in the beginning stages. You had to use DOS. You had to type all the commands out and all that stuff. You didn't have all this. Having conversations over the computer screen.
mm,
So, but with when the nerd, I hate to use that term because, and even if you look at the definition of nerd is all negative.
mm,
Only good, only positive thing when it comes to the word nerd, is intelligent.
right,
Intelligent. So, well, I hate using that. I'll say, let's say the geeks. Okay,
okay,
I'm gonna use geek. Okay, the geeks back then. Now, since the internet, you got a community. You could get online and find like-minded people and interact. And back then, how would you interact with somebody, you know, a state over, a country, outside of, your circle? It's just whenever you went to school, then you went back home, and then you in your own little world.
mm,
So that's why you get that. these negative things like in mama's basement at 50 years old because of all that. But the famous words of I'm not doing the exact quote of Bill Gates. He said, "Be nice to the nerds because they might be your boss someday."
Yeah.
You know, so um, the the nerd, the connotation, the negative stuff about nerd geeks, geeks, uh, has changed. It has totally changed, and it's due to, like I said, the money. And the thing about it is why it was so negative is because people they don't look. There's no geek going to come out and just start talking about cards, comic books, anything, and then build relationships with somebody outside of that work.
Mm.
How hard is it? I mean, for somebody to talk to, date someone, and they start talking about video games
Mm.
and Pokemon Pokemon cards and comic books. I mean, you tell me. You
Mm.
know, and this young lady's like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I'm just saying, what's the expectations there?
Mm.
So, I mean, there's an action, there's a reaction. If you're one of the lucky ones in the geek community to make it big, absolutely. Hey, hats off to you. But everybody doesn't get there.
Right. Right. Would you
So then,
say?
and then what kind of life are you living then?
Hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, if you're smart, a lot of people that were in that era like saved all their stuff that they had because a lot of the stuff is like
Mhm.
worth,
Price,
yeah,
yes,
it's
worth a lot.
priceless now. Like the
Right,
cards and everything like that. Like I forgot what it was. I think it was a Pokemon card or something like that that was worth like
right.
6 figures, something
Mhm.
ridiculous. I was just like, oh, okay. It's just one of those things like it just catches you off guard because it's like you don't when you
You
see
probably
it.
threw that card away when you had it. You're
Right.
like, oh, this is nice.
I
Tear it up.
mean,
Oh,
as
I never.
a young like a young teen, 12, 11, 12 years old, yeah, I had a box of cards, but
Mhm.
those are gone now. Yeah, yeah. They were like a little box. I think I had them and then I just kept them there and they're gone now. But
They're gone. See,
um
they could have been worth something. They could have thrown away hundreds of thousands of dollars right there. Just throw it
possibly,
away.
possibly. I
Yeah.
mean, they were sitting in a little pack and just then it was like a little. I think I remember it was like a little Pokemon box. Like it was just
Hmm.
I went on to do other stuff, play football and
Hmm.
it's like okay,
Life got in the way.
not necessarily got in the way. It was just growing up, and just
Right.
growing up
Right.
and finding other interests to do. But would you say that? I guess this would be another question since not really a majority. It seems like people in that culture tend to have um, a lack of social skills. So would you say that at some point they would need to go out and interact with people outside their group so they can build those social skills and not like keep to themselves? Because I mean I know not on firsthand, but I've seen people that interact with other people that are in that group, and it's just like it's not a it's just like just a plane crash. And you're trying to help, but it's just like I know how you're feeling. You're just anxious and everything like that. But it just seems like not everybody, but a good bit of that group. If you're not talking about the same thing, if you're talking to somebody outside of that group, it's kind of socially awkward. Like there's no nuance or however you want to say to talking to somebody that doesn't know anything about it.
And correct. And that's why. it's a revolving, it's a circle. It's you, the person, the geek wants to get outside, wants that connection. And then when it doesn't work out or they feel awkward or it's hard,
Mm,
they go back to what is good
right.
and positive with video games, that community where they matter, they fit in.
Mm,
You know, as good as they are with a video game, they they are the man or the woman, in that arena. But outside of that, the insecurities, all that stuff, uh, it's not the world is not nice
right.
in a sense. So you go back and back into your world where why wouldn't you? It makes sense. Why would that make sense when I'm the man in this arena, and then to go out here and be treated like I'm not?
Mm,
You're gonna go back home. You're gonna go back what makes that's positive. That's why it's so hard for that connection to be made
mm.
outside.
Do you think they should though? At some point, growing up, they
Well,
should.
we don't live in a bubble.
Yeah.
We
I
don't live in
mean,
a bubble.
unless you're developing your, because you're gonna have to talk to somebody eventually
Sure.
outside of the circle. So, what would you let me hear Jay's plan. What is Jay's plan for somebody who's growing up as a geek or nerd or however you want to propose it? When do you think they should start social skills? Like high
Soon as
school, high school,
soon as possible. So just just be out, because even now it's even worse now
right?
than it was then. We used to get outside. We used to go outside. The parents used to feel safe allowing you to go all day and play, and then just come back before the lights come on, the street lights come on. Today, you don't even want to leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be very difficult to do that now. But, you got, like you said, you mentioned, previous podcasts as well, sports, things like that, where it's you start them off early in team building sports, teams, and things like that. And you create, especially the younger you do it, you could create a lifelong friend. You know, I mean, you got relationships with people who you knew in first grade, and now you're 50 something years old, and you still consider them friend.
Mm-hmm.
So the sooner you start that process, don't take them away from the gaming, cards, comic books, and things like that. Just have an equal balance as they grow up. Do some social things, and then you come back to what you love. But you don't live in a bubble. You got to interact with people. You got to be able to interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
That might not be your strong suit, but it got to be a suit in the closet. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It don't have to be your strong. It don't have to be that super cape. You don't have that cape and you're Superman, but you got to have that, because we just and I guess the internet and all this stuff helps communication wise, but like I said, you gotta interact with people, and know how to.
Okay. Well, speaking on the social skills portion,
Mhm.
this is another thing. This is another stereotype. Um, Typically, that group tends to not do well with the opposite gender or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
So I think I found it really interesting that maybe I might have the timeline mixed up here, but I
Mhm.
remember Henry Cavill talking about he was big into like that. that group of people like building a PC, painting figurines and things like that. And that was a heartthrob for the ladies, and the ladies were like, "Oh, so these kind of guys exist in this space." It was funny to me that when that happened, and then we have another one, Michael B. Jordan, who watches I believe it's anime and stuff like that too, and it's like we're seeing more and more of the guys that are in that are on that main stage, and it's just like you didn't see that or they didn't have that opportunity back in the day because of how they may have looked or whatever, or how they were um, stereotyped or what they were in. I just found it interesting that now the women are starting to see that there's more than just like that jock that's the popular guy in high school or whatever circle they're in, and it was just really entertaining to me.
Yeah, I'm seeing. I think it's a movie out about this guy based on a true story. But you know how that
Right.
document that he learned driving on video games,
Mm-hmm.
and they recruited him to drive in a real car, a real race. I think maybe Indy car,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Indy is big money,
Right.
But the fact that he went from video game to the real deal, you know, says, but that's a one off.
Right.
It's a one off. So let's look. It is big money in that. And, you got people who are into it who have money,
Right.
that you wouldn't, these supposedly sex symbols, that's all well and good, but everybody's not going to fall into that.
Oh no, I
So,
understand it. I'm just saying the fact that the stigma was that group, the majority of the time,
mhm.
the women, like if you encounter a woman of the opposite
The
gender,
women going for
I
this.
understand that may be the case, but I'm just saying I find it funny that now they're
Mhm,
starting to see that there's people like that are in these groups, and now they're
mhm.
like, oh well, maybe I need to go and see what's going on over here or whatever. Because typically you don't really see that. You don't see that. Well, at least when I was growing up, I don't know about. Well, it's probably the same thing
I
for.
have to be honest.
Mm,
No, I'm have to be honest. I told my daughter,
mm.
find you a nerd, find you a geek.
Well, now you are, but I'm saying now
No,
you are,
I
but.
told her that. I told her that when she was in school. I
Mhm.
said, don't worry about these jocks.
No, but what
Don't
I'm
worry
what I'm saying
about
is you're a
guys.
generation
Worry
above
about
us, but I
the guys.
guarantee you
Right.
that they weren't saying that previously. Like they weren't saying that early 2000s or anything like that.
No, no, no. I don't think they were,
Mm,
but I
right.
put, I said, don't overlook that guy that sit there, you know, making a good grade, studying, it got, but it's a different time, and the thing is, with technology, there's a need for active. See, the thing is, geeks, nerds, whatever you want to call them, they're active. They're not passive. You know, passive people can sit and watch TV, and that'll be fine. That's a passive thing.
Mm,
Uh, geeks, nerds, they're active. They are part of it. They want to play. They want to be. That is more active, and that's a good thing because you're not sitting there with idle time, idle minds. And so you're learning, and you can go as far as you want to go at any game, card, or whatever. The more time you put in it, the more things you're learning. It's an active lifestyle,
hmm
more than a passive,
Do
which
you,
is a good thing. I think it's a good thing, but don't let it be to the detriment that you miss other things as well too. You got to interact. You got to be active with people too.
right,
Uh,
right. Of course. Well, like it's a balancing act. Do you think? Oh, not even a majority, but do you think? society is changing their view on that as far as being like you were saying being active. Like they were back before times, I should say. It was seen as like, oh, you're just wasting time. You're not, doing anything this that and the third. Playing video games. It's seen as a waste
Right.
of time. Or oh, it's too violent. This that and how they try to always spin it, like
Spend it.
saying
Right, right, right.
waste of time is violent, but yet I don't see any. I haven't heard anything recently or any time thereof of anybody that's played video games being a shooter or being a school shooter or something like
But you see the isolation though.
mm,
You see isolation, you see separation from people. So what were they doing during this time? Are they active doing other things? And that's why there's a disconnect and where you could be easily influenced because you disconnected yourself from the world.
mm,
And so, okay, you could have your gaming nation, right? You could have your card nation, you could have your comic book. But if one element of something comes in that spins you a certain way in that circle, you could be that active shooter.
right,
You could be that active shooter.
right. I mean,
So,
I don't understand why they try to spin like that because I know Oregon Trail taught me resource management, how to take care of people. Tetris taught me geometry.
you work as a group too.
Yeah,
You work as
exactly.
a team, right?
Team building.
That's right.
So,
Everybody has, certain skills, and you need
right,
each person to make it through.
right,
That's all working together. You fit in. You're part of a community. You're part of the game, and you play a role.
right.
You get on a football team. You play the role, but you're not needed. In a sense, your
I mean, you
need
you could be
is not
replaced.
seen like it is when it's on a video game or things like that.
Right. And so I feel like, and this is more so the
Mhm.
generation probably in front of you, maybe a little bit in your generation that are yelling at the clouds for that kind of stuff. It's like, you obviously haven't partaken in it. There's a lot of complex things that go into, the like Paperboy. That's geometry. You have to do it at an angle, throw the paper at an angle to get in the mailbox and avoid the dog run. I know you know Paperboy. That was around your era. Um, you got
But
Tetris, Pac-Man,
right, Pac-Man,
all those things teach you like if not math skills, like I don't even know, just
reaction. I mean, it,
cognitive
it's
function.
it's all good things out of it, but it shouldn't be the only thing.
Right.
You do need relationships. You
Of
do
course.
need.
Of
We
course.
we weren't designed to be by ourselves
No, of
in a
course.
sense of being in a closet and not interact. But it should be, where bodies, interaction, touch,
Right.
not just over a screen.
Right.
So it's good things, and like I said, we need that community. A lot of the stuff that we have today is based from that community, that
Mm.
mindset, that active mindset, um, and not the negative nerd, like the definitions say, awkward and boring and things. That's not who they are. They really put on a different hat in a different environment. They're totally like, I mean, you play video games. You got this docile guy, probably 5 feet, 130 pounds, and he's slaying all these beasts and everything on the screen because he's the man, because he knows how to play it. He's built himself to a point where he's a hero.
Hmm.
But he walks outside the door and he's a zero to society
Right.
in a sense. So where you going to go back to?
Right, of course. You're gonna go back to what you're comfortable with.
Right. I'm a hero.
Mm,
You know, I can slay these big demons and dragons and all these other things. Nobody can touch me. And now people are paying you for that. Military is using that mindset, those type gamers and things like that to for future military where the military is going now, things
right.
like that. So it's changing, but you think about it, that 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 gamer or that card, that comic guy, he wants to be loved. He wants somebody to love him. He, you know, he wants that special person. And what I'm saying is, we hadn't got to the point where women, unless you make it big, you're not gonna get that type of woman.
I mean, it's more so debatable now. It's more so debatable now. Like I said, I think once
But
they saw you don't have
the
to
potential,
make it. Once they saw the potential of who came out of that group, then they're looking under the rocks and everything like that. So, you don't necessarily have to make it to get what you're looking for. So, but
but it's going to be the mainstream because that's the way everything's going.
yeah,
Most people working from home. Most people can and think about it, just like active, just being active. Somebody who's at home that's willing to do the work at home in the same veracity as they play video games or do anything else, they're going to stand out
right.
in corporate online.
Positively or negatively, because depending
Negative.
on
That's
uh,
right. That's
depending
right.
on who you work for, who you work with, they may try to
Right.
negatively they may try to put more work than what you're supposed to do on your plate and not
That
pay
is
you
right.
for it. So
That's right.
it's
That's
it's a
right. Yeah, well, you got to gauge that, but
exactly.
it's but no, no, it's an interesting topic because the bullies back, I mean, back in the days, the geeks and the nerd, they were being bullied, you know, mistreated, and you see the old movies,
Hmm.
and probably some of the current movies that still use that stereotypical um negative um aspect of being intelligent and things
Right.
like that.
Yeah. But I just wanted to bring it up because I've seen this was something that's been past couple of years, and I just thought about it, and I was like, when did this
Hmm.
become mainstream? This was more like it was more like a speakeasy kind of thing, like back in the a room in the back of the club where it's just like you have your small group of people. Oh,
What's that? What's that show that used to come on all the time? With the it was funny. I saw bits of a few. I didn't watch it on a regular. Um, the guys were geeks, funny, and but they all lived together, interacted with non-geeks, and
mm.
it was just funny. Uh, it wasn't Third Rock. No, it was it was about I
Are you
forgot
talking
the
about the
name.
that show with like Sheldon? They made a spin-off of it or whatever.
Uh,
The dude's name was Sheldon.
I
Um,
think so. Yeah,
I
yeah,
know what you're talking about. I never saw an episode of it, but I know exactly what you're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it lasted a long time. But it was just making fun of these smart people interacting with not so smart people, and it was. But
Right.
the few episodes I saw, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
It was good. It was entertaining,
Okay.
but it was still a stereotypical negative with with funny in it,
Mm.
but it was still a stereotypical. Now it's no, like you said, it's a positive there, but I still think that the interaction, how they need to overcome that socializing aspect of it. It's a hurdle that needs to be addressed. Not only when you make it big, but before that.
Right.
What do you think? they're getting there, or
Yeah, 100%.
okay.
100%. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just always goes back to be careful who you interact with because you'll never know who they might who they might become or whatever like that, and that
That's
still holds true to this day, you know. Um, so if you're gonna make fun of somebody or whatever, I mean, you can make fun and jest and everything like that. That's
right.
always that's gonna happen regardless. People are gonna
Oh
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
a
You gotta learn to take it. You gotta learn
right.
to take the joke. Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to continue to get popular, and I'm not mad at it. I'm actually happy that it's becoming its own thing or whatever. It's just
Yeah,
I just find it funny the route that it took from becoming this thing that was looked at negatively to now all of a sudden everybody wants a piece of it because of how much money or who's coming out of that group or it's just that's all it takes. It just takes one essentially.
that's right.
So
Right. And with any interactive type um, interaction to anything, the person's only going to get better. Just like working out, the more you work out, the stronger you're going to get, the more endurance you're going to get, and the healthier you're going to be.
mhm,
So interactive always beats passive. So so that person has potential to make big in an interactive
right,
type environment compared to a passive.
exactly. I mean, I have nothing else to say.
Mhm.
Is there anything you need to say
No,
before we head
no,
out of here?
no, no. I just I appreciate guys that are out there and women as well. Do your thing, but try to interact with people. Just a little bit, and don't be afraid if somebody. You got to get past the being uncomfortable. You always got your safe haven. You can always go back to that, but you got to work on the other side of that as well. That's
Right.
the only thing I would suggest.
Right. And I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with you. But all right, old man. Next
Peace.
week is your topic, I suppose.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be good,
And
like always.
that's what you always say. But anyway, we hope you all enjoyed this episode and we'll see you next week. And
I
until
did.
then, we're out of here. Later.
Peace.